Coming up on Maine Challenge, the three principal communicators at the Maine People's Alliance. Hello, and welcome to Maine Challenge. Our guests today are Ben Chin, Esther Pugh, and Mike Tipping of the Maine People's Alliance. They are the co-hosts of a Beacon podcast, which is regularly available at the Maine People's Alliance website and other places on the web. Welcome, Mike, Esther, and Ben.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be on.
It's good to see you here. We're in the final days running up to the 2020 election. Not a dull moment in history. Lots of important things going on, and my guess is that there are not many undecideds. At least I don't know any. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that, on the undecideds going into this election?
I have thoughts about people that are still undecided at this point. I'm not sure that they are allowed on television here. I mean, I think this is such a pivotal election, not just because of all the issues and the ways that so many people will be affected by the decisions that are about to be made, but just in terms of our democracy. Like, I can't believe that people can't see the huge gulf that's facing us right now.
It's remarkable. Esther, any thoughts on that?
I would say the conversation around undecided voters, there are some out there. And my role as an organizer, we have volunteers and members of MPA calling voters all across the state and texting them. And they have come across some of these so-called undecided voters and I'm always like, how is that conversation? What is that like? Because as you said, you don't know any. I personally don't know any, but we've definitely talked to a few. But yeah, it's been very interesting talking to voters and hearing what our members have to say after they talk with them.
Yeah, and to be slightly more serious about it, most undecided voters, it's not that they're somewhere in the middle or they can't decide between two poles. It's that they share a set of values that sometimes compete, and maybe they're not as plugged into politics as those of us watching this show are. And, it's really what values are reinforced right before the election. So if we can reach people about the importance of community and coming together and caring about one another, that can make a real difference right now.
Ben, do you encounter a lot of undecided voters?
Yeah, I mean, I think the piece, I agree with what Mike and Esther are laying out there. I think the piece that I would add is that the campaigns, in a weird way, maybe bear some responsibility for this, because I think voters who are still undecided at this point, negative advertising isn't going to be the thing that gets them over the hump. And so I think we are starting to see, which is kind of unusual, I think, late in the game, but there actually is a little bit more positive stuff being put out there, I think, to address this. I think, to Mike's point about what's it going to take to get somebody over the fence to really affirmatively vote for someone. They want to know what that person stands for, what their vision is, what they're going to be like when they actually try to govern. And so I think that's been a little bit of a missing ingredient that I think people who are on the fence might still be looking for.
I have to say, I find it astonishing that the advertising, and it's not equally balanced, but the advertising is so often false and deceptive, especially from the PAC called 1820. But I noticed a approved by Susan Collins ad, which means she paid for it, that accuses Sarah Gideon of being a millionaire. And Susan Collins is a millionaire, and I think it's a fair question to ask Susan Collins, how do you become a millionaire with $190,000 a year salary and 2 houses to keep up? I'd really like to know the answer to that question, and I'd like to know where Susan thinks that calling Sarah a millionaire is somehow destructive. Any thoughts on that, Mike?
So you'd like some stock tips from Susan Collins here?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the bigger question here is not who is a millionaire, but who's on the side of the millionaires and billionaires. And it's who's voting to make sure that they don't pay taxes and starve important programs like healthcare and education. And that's Susan Collins.
Wow. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, the tax vote that she took, that was one of the biggest tax breaks for millionaires in history. I think that really, to me, settles that question. But the thing to connect this to the undecided voter question that's a little confusing about that is that sounds like kind of a progressive attack, right? It's like, oh, like it's not good to be rich. And it's like, oh, okay, well, who normally makes that point? Well, typically folks rightly associate Democrats with that kind of attack. And so I think that gets to the value confusion, that we were talking about. It's a little bit of a shell game where you're trying to sub out issues for talking about somebody's personal history, but doing it as a Republican with values that are typically associated with Democrats. And that's just confusing, and it doesn't really help the country move forward on important issues if the premise of that is you think there's too much economic inequality, which seems to be what it's getting at.
Esther, do you think that's an intentional device?
I think that ads are, I'm trying my hardest not to listen to them at this point because number one, I've already voted. So early voting has already happened. And number two, I'm one of the decided voters. I've been decided for a while. And I'm trying not to listen to them because a lot of the ads just tend to make me angry and pull in my emotions, which I think ties into what Ben was just saying. And that's the point. Like, making people have an emotional response about something. But a lot of the ads that Collins or people who are supporting Collins are putting out are having the opposite effect on me than they probably want to have on the undecided voters. I just get angrier when I hear about some of the things that I think are really misleading. And I know I'm not alone in those reactions to the ads that I'm seeing on my TV.
We should say, I mean, some of that is by design. Like some of the people that don't want us to all participate in politics, they know if they run really nasty campaigns, it'll turn off people and make it so they don't vote.
Yeah, well, I'm still going to vote because
there you go.
Because it just makes me angry and more excited to vote and vote certain people out of office and other people into office.
Yeah, in my household, two of us have already voted, and the third, my wife, works at the polls on election day, so she. I find myself very alarmed and disturbed that the Democrats are falling short, in my opinion, on holding Republicans accountable for the Trump agenda, such as it may be. I mean, specifically, I would like to hear Republican candidates either bravely stand with Trump, or repudiate Trump. And I don't hear that at all. And the Democrats are not holding them accountable to anything I can see. And I'm talking about things like kids in cages, immigration policy, which pretty much ends the discussion for me, but also the destruction of Social Security. There's nobody out there who doesn't know somebody on Social Security. And how are we okay sitting back and letting Trump say, yeah, we're going to end it by 2023? I mean, that's just absolutely insane to me. And there's also the destruction of environmental regulations, the obvious drilling in national parkland, and also what affects all of us is the destruction of the post office. And I'd really like to hear your thoughts, A, on those agenda items for Republicans, and B, why the Democrats aren't making local and down ticket Republicans take a stand on those. Mike?
Well, I think, a lot of our elections have been nationalized. And I think a lot of down ticket Republicans are going to feel the anger of people about a lot of those issues. And I think it's more and more recognized, that that is what they're working for. I do think it's interesting that Susan Collins has gone to now comedic lengths to try and avoid taking a position in the presidential race that almost everyone else in the country has been able to reach a decision on. And now she's saying that she doesn't want to play pundit and she needs to not basically make Trump angry so she can work with him if he wins. And her campaign manager was saying that on Twitter this morning, and that no one in the history of Maine politics has ever done that in a presidential race, and they instead focus on delivering for Maine. And that is just ahistorical and insane. Like, her party was founded by men in Maine who thought that the issues of the nation were more important than the parochial local ones, right? And that slavery was the big issue they had to speak out on, and they founded the Republican Party. And her hero is Margaret Chase Smith, who's best known for playing pundit, as I guess her campaign manager would say, and speaking out on those issues. So, I mean, it is a sad thing that Senator Collins has been reduced to, where she won't even take a position on or tell people who she's voting for president. And I think it's an acknowledgement that she can't avoid those issues that you just mentioned, that she's going to wear them around her neck like an albatross.
Ben, any thoughts on what I said?
Well, I know there's a bit of a difference of opinion amongst my co-hosts on this one, but I thought the worst example of what you were talking about there, Chuck, was the Democratic Party actually putting up signs for Trump and Collins. I get the clever little thing that's doing there, trying to associate them together. But I just think at a basic level, what the kind of issues that you're talking about are so life and death, and they have harmed so many people directly. The name Trump is a symbol of so much of all the worst things in our country, all rolled into one. It just seems like not the kind of thing you can sort of casually toss up as a little bit of a little convenient political jab. So I think that's been in poor taste, and they should be, I agree, doing a little bit more of what you're talking about.
Esther, do you think that Sarah Gideon can simply say, "I'm not Susan Collins," and win?
I wish it was that simple, I guess is probably the way to say that. But as we know from all of the polling out there, this race is like virtually it's dead heat, like right now. Look, and I also, 2016 taught me not to trust polls. So I am just going to keep working like we're always behind. That's how I feel we should always work. I think that sharing a voting record of both Sarah Gideon's record, her own, and then the record of Susan Collins will work for some folks, and really also for me, it's like an emotional conversation when people are sharing their reasons for voting a certain way or for supporting a certain candidate, or why certain issues impact them and how they impact them. That is what pulls at my heartstrings. And I'm an emotional voter, and I'm an emotional person. So I wish it could be as simple as saying, I'm not this other candidate, vote for me. But we also have ranked choice voting in Maine too, which I love. And I'm excited to see how that also plays into the race come November. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I just kind of went in a circle, because that's also something I do a lot, but yeah.
I find it not, this election is so clear cut that you can pick one issue and say, okay, well, that settles it. And for the Collins Gideon race, I would say it's judges. I mean, I think, and I felt at the time, that when Susan Collins made that awful speech on the Senate floor saying she was going to vote for Kavanaugh, it kind of felt to me like it was over for her. And of course, we don't know until Election Day or maybe later, but it's there are so many issues that you can just take one issue and say, okay, well, that's why I'm going to vote for Sarah Gideon, is because of what 30 or 40 right-wing judges besides Kavanaugh that Collins has voted for. I mean, I don't need to go any further into that record as far as I'm concerned, although I think Susan has changed. When we had Jenna Fellows on this, I asked her if the Susan Collins this year was the same Susan Collins she ran against 6 years ago, and she said, not really. I think it's kind of interesting. As we approach one of the really big fulcrum issues, I think it's obviously the Healthcare Act and the fact that the vote is coming up in the Supreme Court on the 10th, which would decimate the Affordable Care Act and take away health care from some 20 million people. I'd like to hear each of you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that, just that one fulcrum issue, but anything else you want to add about the Barrett vote. And it seems inevitable, but maybe we'll get lucky. Let's start with Ben.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like in another year, it in particular might seem inevitable, but who would have thought that all those senators would have been at the White House, exposed to COVID, got sick, said hope, So I think we're definitely living in a time where we don't want to take anything for granted. Chuck, I don't know if this memory sticks out as much for you as it does for me, but I remember when LePage forgot to veto all of those bills. And you guys in the legislature had just sent him this raft of stuff. And at the time, it was just like, oh, yeah, there's nothing we can really do. It's not like it's actually there, he'll veto, whatever. We don't have the votes to override. But then, asylum seekers got their general assistance protected. I mean, there's a whole host of things that ended up working. And to me, that I've always carried that lesson of you just always have to keep pushing. And there's certainly no downside right now for us to make our voices heard, put as much pressure as we can on Collins and everybody else in the country who's thinking about voting the wrong way on that confirmation. But I do think it's absolutely right to point out that this really could be healthcare for millions of people on the line in a lot of different ways. And I think too, just to raise the stakes maybe a little higher, is the Affordable Care Act was the really big thing that we were able to do to improve folks' lives. And if all of a sudden that gets erased, then I think you're really going to start to have an even deeper crisis about institutions in America. Does democracy really work? How are we supposed to solve these problems of economic inequality, healthcare, all those other things if the Affordable Care Act goes away? So I think it's really hard to imagine more being at stake than that and the other things that are going to happen really quickly in the next 8 weeks.
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Susan Collins voted 6 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And she signed an amicus brief saying the Supreme Court should repeal it if it didn't have the individual mandate. And then she voted to take away the individual mandate. And I think it says something about the importance of that program that she's now trying to cloak herself as the defender of healthcare here. I think, though, in a broader sense, like the talk about judges and about her connection to the Republican Party, it is fascinating to me that that has become a progressive issue. For so long, control of the courts was the conservative issue. And they've had all these institutions like the Federalist Society pushing so hard on that. And now it's something that so many Mainers care about. Similarly with control of the Senate, I mean, we've heard from pollsters that Mitch McConnell has better name recognition in Maine than anywhere else in the country, maybe except Kentucky. Like, people here care about that she is voting for him and that he is totally supporting Trump's agenda. And I think it has become a much more national race, and the kind of local focus that she has tried to have in the past while supporting every Republican initiative when they needed her vote just isn't working this year.
Esther?
Yeah, healthcare is the number one issue that I hear when I talk to voters, or that our members hear when they are texting and calling voters. And it's definitely the thing that is like everyone is thinking about when they go to the polls to vote. I know that I benefited from the ACA when I was younger, getting medication and being able to afford medication, being able to go to the doctor. So this is an issue that also impacts me and like thousands and millions of people that we obviously know. And then just to go off of what Mike said with Mitch McConnell's name being so recognized, I actually just remembered I did talk to an undecided voter a few days ago who was told by somebody, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to vote. And I'm like, well, I can help you. But he told me that someone had told him that a vote for Susan Collins is a vote for Mitch McConnell. And that was that made him decide that he didn't want to vote for her, which I thought was really like fascinating and really ties into the conversation about how this race in Maine is impacting what happens across the entire country, and everyone has eyes on this race.
Do any of you have any predictions you'd like to share about the outcome of any of the races? Local, state, national? Mike?
I don't have any prediction. Well, I think Shelley Pingree is going to win.
Oh,
yeah, bold. Maybe I can share a little breaking news here. It's just as we're recording, there's a really cool thing happening in Portland. There's a group of Mainers with diabetes that are actually standing outside of Senator Susan Collins' office right now, and they are calling on her to fire her campaign chair, who I think is someone you may know, Chuck, Josh Tardy, who, among other things, is a lobbyist for Eli Lilly and for Pharma. And, that company has worked to jack up the price of insulin. And Collins has been flooding the airwaves with ads saying that she's against that price gouging, while at the same time, literally Eli Lilly's lobbyist is running her campaign. So I hope that's an issue that we continue to talk about in the coming weeks here.
Ben.
I was going to say, Mike, that's a clever way to get out of making a prediction. I don't have any breaking news I can use to
pivot
out. Yeah, like you did. I don't, I don't think I have any predictions I feel super confident of that are more interesting than Mike's prediction that Shelley Pingree is going to win. But I do think that, the more I've been around this work, the more I have really observed how important the overall structural factors are that determine elections. So things like, what is the state of the economy, and just how hard it is for a president to get reelected when you have a bad economy, when you have basically no domestic or foreign policy accomplishments. And, you can kind of go down the list when you've had major scandals, you've been impeached, these sorts of things, I think, actually matter more than TV ads when it comes down to running campaigns, because believe it or not, voters are actually making their decision based on what's happening in their lives, not, random things that flash before their eyes on TV, So given all of that, I think overall, I feel very positive about Election Day. I don't know if I want to be on the hook for saying so-and-so is going to win or lose. But I do think that the way that can impact strategy, whether you're a candidate, whether you're just, an activist or a voter, is the time to like really try to push to make hard things happen. It's not the time to sit back and be like, this has been such a tough year. Let's just mail it in for the rest of the, it's like, if there's anything you should be mailing in, it should be your ballot, and do that quick. And otherwise just get out, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. We had a great organizer share what it was like for him to call through hundreds of personal relationships that he had and have the uncomfortable conversation, bringing politics up with his friends and family. But that is the kind of thing that really makes a difference. And so we're in a moment where it really is possible to get Collins out of office and Trump and all of that. And so we got to push hard.
Esther, I don't know how you do a show with two wusses like these guys. You can be bold if you wish.
So maybe I'll go out on a ledge and I'll make a few predictions. Yeah, I mean, like I said, polls are something that I haven't trusted in a while. And I know I'm not alone in that. But again, yeah, Shelley Pingree is going to win. There's a prediction there. As somebody who can vote for her, because I do live in the 1st district.
I want some Lincoln County predictions here.
And then I do think that I think that ranked choice voting is going to play a role in the U.S. Senate race. So, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But I do think it will play a role. And I mean, I think Sarah Gideon's going to come out on top. I will say it. So that's what I predict will happen, because I'm gonna take a step off because I've been challenged too, and I won't look down from a challenge.
I'll be very bold and say it's going to come down to turnout. How about that for courage?
There you go.
That's the coward's way out there, I think.
We're all on tenterhooks, and it's going to be an interesting election no matter what. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. And so if any of you have a final quick thought you'd like to add, I'm open to it. But before we even go to that, I want to thank you, Mike Tipping, Esther Pugh, and Ben Chin of the Maine People's Alliance for joining us today on Maine Challenge. Anything final?
I just want to send all my best wishes and encouragement to the #1 Senate race I will be watching. Chloe Maxman, who's running in Lincoln County, has been an absolute champion for seniors on transportation issues. We worked with her on that this year. She's been trying to figure out how to make good union jobs through an apprenticeship program on, public construction of state projects, and is just an extremely hard worker. She's brilliant. She grew up right where she's running, and I wish I lived in Lincoln County so that I could vote for her. And yeah, just really excited about that race, and wishing her and everybody working on all the best.
I'm going to be bold and call that an endorsement. We've had both Chloe Maxman and her opponent on the show, Dana Dow, and I tend to agree with you, but it is a big race and an important race. Mike, a last thought?
Maybe just that Dow in the Bangor Daily News yesterday said that if he goes back, he's going to be looking to cut healthcare and education. So quite a platform to run on.
Wow. And a quick one from Esther as our final word.
Get involved. If you're interested in helping to reach voters, please reach out to MPA and check us out on the website. There's ways to sign up and call and text folks.
Well, thank you very much, all three of you, and to the Maine People's Alliance for their work. And we'll see you next time. This is Maine Challenge, part of Maine, Lincoln County Indivisible and Lincoln County Television. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Show your support for Maine Challenge and LCTV's programming. We're all about community. Please go to lctv.org to make a contribution. Your support makes us stronger together.